When did we start to go wrong? Please give it back to me. I didn't even have the energy to head to the bedroom, so I quietly fell asleep on the living room sofa that day. A few days later, my daughter's husband, David, came to visit me before heading to work. "It's almost over," he said, and left for his job. His unusually strong tone made me feel uneasy, but I didn't think much about it. That night, my husband, John, came home and headed straight to the bathroom without even saying I'm home. I no longer felt anything about his cold behavior. Even though our relationship had grown so cold, we had no choice but to sleep in the same room due to the house layout. I quietly entered the bedroom after John had fallen asleep. However, I couldn't fall asleep even with my eyes closed. I kept tossing and turning, unable to sleep, and soon the clock struck 1 a.m. At that moment, I felt someone else's presence in the room. With my heart pounding, I opened my eyes to see David standing there. "Why?" Ignoring my question, David pulled me out of bed and forcefully pushed me into the closet. He then entered and closed the door just enough to see the room. "What's going on?" "Shoo." David silenced me with one hand, and I involuntarily fell silent under his pressure. He continued to observe the room through the crack in the door. "It's almost time." I had no idea what we were waiting for, but I reluctantly followed his lead. A few minutes later, it happened. "What?" I gasped at the obvious and eerie change in the bedroom, and I could do nothing but watch. People prefer happy endings over bad ones. An ending where no one is missing, and everyone is smiling happily. But does such a story even exist? Isn't someone's happiness always accompanied by someone else's misfortune? This is the story of my happy ending. Happy birthday, Mom. I am Jennifer. I am turning 57 this year. At this age, I usually wouldn't remember my own birthday, but my daughter, Ashley, always celebrates it so diligently that I remember. This year, she gave me a beautiful fountain pen that I can use as a full-time employee. Last year, it was a wallet, I think. This is from me. Happy birthday! Ashley, who has grown up to be so kind, has a husband. His name is David, a former colleague of her. He is a quiet person, often lost in thought. When he was first introduced as her boyfriend, I was honestly a bit worried. But as I saw the kindness in his eyes towards Ashley and how he could be considerate of others, I gradually felt relieved. Even now, though he still seems a bit absent-minded, the gift he handed me was carefully wrapped, and inside was a beautiful scarf. He has good manners and is very kind to us as well. I am happy to be surrounded by such wonderful people. Thank you, both of you. I'll cherish it. Thank you. By the way, we also got a cake, so let's eat it soon. I'll cut it. Thanks. Mom, please sit here. The cake was neatly divided into 4 pieces. Yes, we are not just a family of 3. As David was serving the cake onto plates, the living room door opened. Hey! You guys are so noisy. John. Welcome home. Today is Mom's birthday. Oh, I see. Is there a piece of cake for me too? Yes. Here you go. Okay, then now be quiet from now on. I'm going to bed soon. When David handed John the cake, John took it without even glancing at me or Ashley, and he went straight to the bedroom. What's that? He didn't even say happy birthday to Mom. Oh well, it's been like this for years. I don't let it bother me anymore. John used to be a very kind person. We promised each other that we would be good parents, and then we had Ashley. At first, John seemed to be trying to be a good father. When Ashley cried, he was the first to run to her, even before me, and he brought home new toys for her almost every day. But parenting, for better or worse, is something that takes up a lot of time. He gradually began to prioritize his own desires over spending time with her. As a result, young Ashley became less attached to John. Maybe because he didn't like that, he started avoiding time with her even more, eventually only coming home to sleep. No matter how sick Ashley or I got, John was indifferent, and it felt like the emotional distance between us was growing. By the time Ashley entered elementary school, John was contributing less financially, and I had to work hard to support us. But in recent years, his behavior and the reduction in money have been abnormal, and I've sensed something is off. Coming home late every day, our savings drastically decreasing, the smell of a perfume he never usually wore. He's probably having an affair. Or maybe he's gotten involved with some nightclub or something. Well, either way, it doesn't matter. It's definitely beyond what I can forgive. But he hides it so cleverly that I haven't been able to catch any definitive evidence, and the days have just passed by ambiguously. I'm sorry, Mom. It's okay, it's not your fault. I see. If anything happens, let me know. We should probably get going now. Thank you for having us. Take care. I escorted the two of them to the door and sighed softly. Ashley and I now live in separate houses on the same property. David, who had no other family, came to live with us as our adopted son-in-law, and given John's situation, we decided to build another house on our property. Even so, we still have dinner together in this house, and I spend more time with David than I do with John. With how much time we spend together, it feels like building a separate house wasn't necessary, I thought. To me, they are family, and I plan to keep the three of us together in some way. However, that life didn't last forever. One evening, I finished work early for once and was driving home when I got a call from David. Jennifer! Ashley! She's been in an accident. What? She was hit by a truck. I was at work, but the hospital called. I'm heading there now. Wait a minute! David, usually so absent-minded, spoke with a speed I couldn't believe, and the call ended abruptly. What? Ashley had an accident? How? Is she okay? I was half panicked, but quickly changed the car's direction toward the hospital. I need to call John. Even though he usually showed no interest in us, this was an emergency involving his daughter, so I thought he'd rush over immediately. But the impersonal ringing of the call echoed in the car, but it never stopped. No matter how many times I tried, he never picked up. It was as if he didn't care about us at all. I even called his workplace, but they said he had already left for the day. Even though John was supposed to be off work, he didn't answer his phone. I couldn't understand how he could be unreachable during our daughter's crisis. But when I saw Ashley's changed appearance at the hospital, nothing else seemed to matter anymore. This is Ashley, right? Is it really her? The hospital staff led me to a cold room, not a waiting room or treatment room, but a space with several somethings covered in white cloth. One of those cloths was pulled back, and David was standing beside it. It was unmistakably a human being. The skin had red and black cuts, black hair. But it was no longer in a human shape. The horrific sight made me feel dizzy. David caught me as I almost fell. She tried to save a child from getting hit. It's just like her, so brave. David's hands were cold, and his voice was mixed with a painful laugh, filled with deep sorrow. The half of the face that remained was still beautiful, unmistakably hers. But a glance elsewhere revealed the absence of what should be there. As the officer calmly explained the situation, I started crying uncontrollably. Why, Ashley? She did nothing wrong. Why take her from me? I was so distressed that I wasn't sure what I was saying. I just couldn't stop. If I didn't let out all my tears and feelings, I felt like I would cease to exist as myself. David held me gently, his face twisted with regret. He sniffled occasionally too. Seeing Ashley's husband, much younger than me, trying so hard made me wonder what I should do from now on. It all felt meaningless. The following events passed by in a blur. The police investigation confirmed it was an accident, not a crime, and Ashley was hailed as a hero for saving a child. The funeral was crowded with people, a testament to how loved she was. As her mother, I felt a bit of pride. David seemed to feel the same, showing a slightly proud expression. However, John never contacted us during the funeral. I told him everything only after it was all over. I called you many times. He entered silently through the front door, and I spoke to him. I rarely initiated conversations with him, so he looked a bit surprised. There were traces of bright red lipstick around his mouth, which disgusted me. "Oh, what did you want?" "Where were you?" "I was at work." Don't answer a question with a question. "So, what did you need?" I called his workplace again, but they told me he had been on paid leave for several days. Work. Give me a break. But I didn't have the energy to argue anymore. Ashley was in a car accident. We had her funeral yesterday. I see, that's unfortunate. It felt like a punch to the head. What kind of father reacts to his daughter's accident as if it were someone else's problem? No sign of sadness or pain. Aren't you more upset? Yes, it's very unfortunate. So, where were you during our daughter's emergency? I told you, at work. It's unfortunate about Ashley, but I was working, so what could I do? Don't make me repeat myself. John spoke with slight irritation and then disappeared into the bedroom. I clenched my hands on my lap. I was angry. Angry at John, who seemed unfazed by Ashley's death. And angry at myself for not being able to say anything back to him. Why did this happen? Where did we go wrong? Give her back. Tonight, I didn't even have the strength to head to the bedroom, and feeling overwhelmed by a mix of negative emotions, I quietly fell asleep on the living room sofa. Since then, the days John comes home have noticeably decreased. Today too, it's just David and me saying grace at the dinner table. The table, full of empty seats, lacks any smiles. Loneliness has taken permanent residence, and a heavy atmosphere hangs over everything. Since then, I haven't been able to focus on anything, and I've taken an extended leave from work. Even at home, I do nothing but stare at Ashley's photo on the mantel. Seeing me like this, David has been helping out more with the chores. He frequently expresses his concern, but I can only respond with vague answers. I feel a bit guilty towards him, but I can't bring myself to think about anything right now. David often mutters to himself, as if talking to someone, but even that doesn't concern me. One day, David came to my house before work. He usually visits in the evening, as mornings are busy with preparations, so I wondered what was going on. What's wrong? It's almost over. Before I could ask what he meant, David gave a brief nod and left for work. His unusually firm tone made me feel a bit uneasy. I had no idea what he was talking about, but I assumed it was work-related and didn't think much more about it, spending another empty day. That evening, John came home for the first time in a while. Without even a word of greeting, he headed straight to the bathroom, and I felt nothing. Still, due to the layout of the house, we had to sleep in the same room. I entered the bedroom quietly after John had fallen asleep. But I couldn't drift off, tossing and turning restlessly. As the clock struck midnight, I felt a presence in the room. I opened my eyes nervously, only to see David standing there.
Why are you here?
Ignoring my question, David pulled me out of bed and forced me into the closet. He squeezed in too, closing the door just enough to keep the room in view. The closet was stifling with both of us crammed in, leaving little room to move.
What's going on?
Shoo. David silenced me with one hand, and I fell quiet under his pressure. He watched the room through the crack in the door.
It's almost time.
I had no idea what we were waiting for, but I mimicked him, peering through the door. The room started to fill with a white mist. The once stifling closet air turned icy. The mist gathered at John's pillow and began to take the form of a woman. What? I recognized the figure immediately. It was Ashley. Her image wasn't clear, but I knew it was her. As I nearly cried out, David clamped his hand over my mouth. Ashley was murmuring something by John's side, and he seemed to weaken in response. It looked like some sort of ritual to torment John. Watching, I felt short of breath and broke out in a cold sweat. After a while, Ashley stopped and vanished into thin air. I couldn't make sense of what had happened. John was no longer restless, but was drenched in sweat, confirming the reality of what I had seen. When I asked David for an explanation, he whispered, "Not here," and led me to the living room. Hey, that was Ashley, right?
Yes, it's Ashley. Or more precisely, something like Ashley's thoughts.
Thoughts?
Yes, when something is left undone in reality, it stays like that.
How do you know that?
I've been able to see things like that since I was a kid.
David has always had a strong intuition since he was a child, and he could see things that were usually invisible to others in everyday life. Because of this, he often felt exhausted during the day, and he apologized for his lack of cheerfulness, saying it was because of this. Ashley knew about this and was even more drawn to David after learning about it. I thought it was just like her. She was always a child full of curiosity.
I've always avoided people because I thought they would find me creepy for having this ability. But she accepted me for who I am. That's why I decided to stay by her side forever.
David looked nostalgically at an empty space again. There was nothing there, but I was sure Ashley was there, just invisible to me. I had never really believed in spirits, but after witnessing what I saw earlier, I couldn't help but believe.
When Ashley was gone, I couldn't sleep at all that night. But I felt her presence. I couldn't see her clearly yet, though.
I see.
But as the memorial service approached, she became more visible. Now I can even talk to her.
It turned out that when David occasionally talked to someone, it was her, who remained here as a spirit. Being able to talk to her again, even though she was supposed to be gone forever, was incredible. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't see Ashley's form. I envied his ability. Did Ashley say anything?
The first thing she did was apologize. She said she was sorry for leaving so suddenly.
I wanted to tell Ashley that she didn't need to apologize. She didn't do anything wrong. She protected our child, she was a hero.
She was very worried about Jennifer. She wanted her to recover quickly.
I couldn't possibly recover. She was my everything, my only family.
And she was very angry at John. She wanted to confront him today, which is why that happened. I'm sorry if it scared you.
I see, but why the closet?
Honestly, spirits and emotions are hard to understand. I was worried that Ashley's negative feelings might affect Jennifer.
I see. It did feel a bit suffocating. Did Ashley have anything to do with John coming back suddenly today?
Yes, she did something. I'm not sure exactly what.
David shrugged and said that spirits were mysterious. I had many feelings about John that I wanted to confront him about someday. Maybe now was the perfect chance. It was time to resolve this crumbling family situation. David, are you free tomorrow?
Huh? Oh, yes, I think so.
Let's end this. I want to talk to John properly. Can Ashley join us?
She's nodding and smiling. She might have a plan, but I'm not sure. That's reassuring. All right, let's get some sleep. Yes, oh, and Ashley really cared about Jennifer. So please, don't push yourself too hard. I understand. Good night.
David, probably with Ashley, went home. I didn't want to go back to the bedroom, so I lay down on the living room sofa. Unlike earlier, I quickly fell into a deep sleep. Even though the sofa wasn't comfortable, it was the best sleep I'd had in a long time. I woke up to the sound of birds chirping. Sunlight was streaming pleasantly through the gap in the curtains, and I thought it was a wonderfully peaceful morning. As I sat there for a while, lost in thought, I suddenly heard a scream followed by the sound of heavy footsteps running towards me.
Jennifer! It was my fault. I've been cheating. I'm sorry. Please forgive me.
John burst into the living room and immediately started apologizing with great urgency. I was stunned by the suddenness of it all, but I guessed that he must have had a dream where Ashley said something to him.
Why did you do such a thing?
When Ashley was born, Jennifer, you were always just focused on Ashley.
So at first, I was just fooling around out of spite, but before I knew it. I'm really sorry now. I won't ever do it again. Ashley made me realize that. Let's start over as a married couple.
His voice sounded like he was about to cry. Seeing a grown man, who has brought his own misfortune upon himself, crying and wailing was pathetic.
It's too late now. Do you really think I could forgive a man who was cheating even during Ashley's last moments?
My voice came out much colder than I had expected. And John, surprised, shook his shoulders.
But originally, it was you who only paid attention to Ashley and never looked at me. It's not my fault, it's yours.
John raised his voice in desperation, making my body tense up slightly. At that moment, the front door opened, and David walked in. John looked at him, or more precisely, at the empty space to his left, and started to tremble.
Oh, so you can see her, John. Ashley, it's not what you think. John didn't mean to disregard Ashley. He was just lonely. He wanted to attend your funeral, too.
John frantically tried to explain, but he was speaking to an empty space. Yet, Ashley must be there.
Ashley. She's really angry at you right now. For Jennifer.
I couldn't see anything, but John's panic spoke volumes. But such shallow words won't resonate.
The cheating! Jennifer never paid attention to me. It was Ashley who took Jennifer away from me in the first place. Why do I have to hear this from you?
A father should never say that his wife was taken away by his daughter. We promised to raise her together. And he broke that promise, shifting the blame to others and not understanding his own wrongdoing.
Jennifer, hurry up and forgive me. If you don't, I don't know what Ashley will do to me. Hurry, please.
Even in this situation, he's only thinking about saving himself, which is truly exasperating. Even David next to me looked fed up.
Look, Jennifer, I'm your husband, right? And Ashley, I'm her father. Let's talk it out, and you'll see, okay?
I'm exasperated. Why did I keep this relationship going with such a man? I should have realized his twisted thinking much earlier. But today, I can finally say goodbye to this vague daily life.
I no longer consider you my husband or Ashley's father. Disappear from my sight.
As I finished speaking forcefully, John's eyes widened and he hung his head. His eyes, void of light, stared at the floor as he mumbled something incomprehensible. I suddenly felt unsure of what had just happened and instinctively moved closer to John, but David stopped me, saying it was okay. I felt as if someone had embraced me from the front. Though only John, now devoid of will, stood before me. I instinctively felt it was Ashley. I can't see it, touch it, or hear it, but I know I'm being held right now. I feel warmth. I say thank you and hug back. I thought I heard a voice saying, "I'm sorry."
You don't have to apologize. Of course, I feel really lonely. But I'm happy to feel you one last time like this. Thank you so much for everything. Please be happy.
Her presence, that warmth, slowly faded away. Suddenly overcome by loneliness, I reached out desperately, but my hand grasped nothing but air.
No one can beat Jennifer. Ashley had the happiest face I've ever seen.
As a mother, I always thought there was more I could have done for her. But hearing David's words now, I felt relieved. If she was satisfied, that was enough for me. My regrets will stay with me until the grave. John hung his head and froze. After that, he was taken to a psychiatric hospital. Occasionally, he would regain lucidity, tremble in fear, and mumble something again. His unusual symptoms puzzled the doctors, but eventually, he was admitted to a psychiatric hospital. Even seeing John, who had become like an empty shell, didn't stir any feelings of sympathy in me. Because this is the binding love Ashley left him with.
Well, now that everything's done, I guess I'll get back to work.
Maybe this isn't really the end. Ashley is gone, and John is broken. From the outside, it might look like a bad ending. But my heart feels strangely clear. All the years of worry over John have ended. I was able to hold Ashley one last time. Having David, who is so kind, as a family to support me is wonderful. To me, this is a happy ending. I have no more regrets. I am still legally married to John. Honestly, I have no intention of taking care of him in the future, but due to disability benefits and the house deed, we haven't divorced. Even so, I feel a slight guilt, so I occasionally check on him. Well, it's a psychiatric hospital, so I can't visit him. He still spends his days in fear and apology, and the doctors say it will be a long time before he's discharged. I don't wish him unhappiness, but I want him to atone for his sins. David seemed a bit disappointed that Ashley's spirit was gone.
I can't see her anymore, but you seem so much brighter than before. I'm glad about that.
He is truly a nice man. We talked once about our future lives.
David, you don't have to worry about me anymore. You can live freely. You don't have to stay in this house. That's true, but if you're okay with it. I want to stay here. Why? Ashley always thanked you. She said it was thanks to Jennifer that she could do what she wanted and grow up straight in such an environment. Ashley didn't need to say that. No, I feel the same way as Ashley. You have an incredible capacity to accept others. Living in this house. I think of you as my real mother.
He said this while looking away, his ears a little red. He looked so much like my own son that I couldn't help but laugh. Though he looked dissatisfied, he started laughing with me. As our laughter echoed, a fresh breeze blew through the room. It was a very pleasant breeze, like Ashley's bright smile from the altar. I was attacked with a bat on my way home from my part-time job, leaving me with a broken arm. Even though I was hospitalized due to overwork and fever, I couldn't get in touch with my husband, Stephen. I managed to call his workplace and pleaded.
Excuse me, I'm Stephen Davis's wife. Could you please put my husband on the phone?
The woman on the other end replied with a puzzled voice. There's no one by that name here. There's no one by that name here.
What do you mean?
I asked, my voice trembling. After talking further with the person on the phone, I learned that she was actually Stephen's real wife, Margaret. I had been deceived by Stephen all this time.
Hey Amy, who do you think is responsible for what happened to your arm? Who? I don't think the cause is just this person himself. I have an idea. Could you hold off on reporting him to the police and let me handle this for a bit?
I decided to trust Margaret's words. My name is Amy Davis, 27 years old. I'm a part-time working wife, married for 5 years. My husband Stephen is 37. Exactly 10 years older than me and a very reliable person. Stephen works as a lawyer. That's why he's always so busy with work and often doesn't come home. I married Stephen right after graduating from college at 22. My parents were against my marriage to the man I had been dating since college. They said I was too young, that I should gain work experience first, that I might be getting tricked by a man 10 years my senior. Shocked by my parents' words, I ran off to be with Stephen. He readily agreed to let me stay with him. And so we got married, just like that. No ceremony. Believing we would have a proper one someday, we didn't even take photos. Since then, I've been working part-time and living in this room, waiting for Stephen. But Stephen really is busy. Hey, do you really have so many overnight jobs? I realized I had been constantly asking him the same question since we got married. That's right. Being a lawyer is really busy. You're young and naive, so you probably don't understand, but when clients are far away, there are a lot of overnight jobs. He often told me stories about how he had clients who relied on him from far away. I'm a simple person, so I just thought, oh, is that so? To begin with, I'm not the type to think deeply about things. That's probably why, when I fell in love with him, it was a straight shot. His job was something I had no connection to, so I could only listen in amazement. Recently, busy Stephen has had more days where he doesn't come home. It's probably because he is a capable lawyer, but for me, it's just unbearably lonely. I'm the type of person who wants to have someone I love by my side. That's why, during college, I was always with my friends and participated in various clubs and parties. I sometimes think back on how fun those days were. It's also significant that I was an only child at home and received a lot of love from my parents. Having married against my parents' opposition, I can't go crying to them now even if I'm lonely. So, to distract myself from that loneliness, if I heard that the part-time staff was short or overtime was needed, I would volunteer myself and try to minimize the time I spent alone. Hey, you can't come home again today? Sometimes, when I couldn't bear it, I would call Stephen and he would reply,
You understand, right? I'm working too. Don't be selfish.
Unable to endure it, I would find myself sending him messages on social media saying I'm lonely. Please come home soon. I'll make a feast, so just tell me when you'll be back. Then he would reply,
Stop doing that because it interferes with my work. Stop doing that because it interferes with my work.
Is that how men are? Recently, his pace of coming home is once a week, no, maybe once every 2 weeks. I was very lonely. Now, I come home, finish the housework with my tired body, and then fall into a deep sleep. That's how my days go. What in the world happened to him? He couldn't have been that busy back when we were dating. I want him to be by my side more. But even if I'm thinking that alone, if Stephen refuses my calls and messages, I have no choice but to endure it. Unless something really urgent happens, then one day, as usual, I got home late due to overtime. The apartment we live in is about a 10-minute walk from the nearest station. It's in a residential area, but there are places where the streetlights are intermittent, which is a bit scary. The places where houses have been demolished and there are land for sale signs feel like the darkness is gaping open. A fear of not knowing what might suddenly appear wells up from within. That's why, whenever I approached that area, I would always break into a light jog. I'm even considering buying a bicycle. Because you never know what might suddenly happen. And on this day, that something did happen. When I checked the time as I left the station, it was already past 10 p.m. I was especially tired that day. My job is clerical work at a certain factory, but when it's busy, I also get sent to the warehouse. At those times, it often involves physical labor. Today, I received a report that the products we were supposed to have ordered were wrong, so I went to the warehouse to check the inventory, taking out and putting away many cardboard boxes, loading and unloading them. I also ran around to various places to contact the people out in the field. Thanks to that, my feet and body were completely exhausted. I found myself dragging my feet, which felt heavy. At that moment, I suddenly noticed. I felt a presence behind me. If I stopped, the other person would also stop, and if I started walking, they would also start moving again. After repeating this a few times, I realized that someone was following me. I have to run. But my feet are heavy and won't move well. I try to run, but my exhausted feet won't carry me forward properly. The person following me from behind must have noticed my movements, as they come running toward me. I gasp and turn around. A small figure is raising something toward me. I'm going to be hit. That's what I immediately thought, and I shielded my head with my left arm. A huge impact and pain shoot through my elbow. I see that a bat had strongly struck my arm. Losing my balance, I tumble to the ground, along with the bag I was carrying. The assailant tries to hit me again as I lay there. What should I do? What should I do? What should I do? I can't bear to be hit many times with something like this. What my frantic hand touched was the smartphone that had flown out of my bag. I desperately pressed the camera shutter. The flash of light pierces the assailant's eyes. On the lock screen, the light or camera are the only things that respond immediately, but at that moment either one was fine. I just wanted an instant to dazzle the assailant's eyes, so I moved my finger desperately. That's when I realized it. The assailant was a woman. I muttered without thinking. As the assailant approached, a scent suddenly wafted over. Along with what seemed to be the person's own shampoo, there was also a familiar scent mixed in. The same scent as Stephen's. I found myself muttering. Then the assailant threw the bat they were holding and quickly ran away from the scene. The bat clattered as it rolled on the ground. I crouched there for a while, unable to move. Not only that, but my arm that had been hit by the assailant was in a lot of pain. Thinking this was bad, I fiddled with my smartphone as is and called the police in a trembling voice. As I waited, slumped down, a police car and ambulance arrived. The police must have assessed the situation and called for the paramedics too. The doctor who examined me at the hospital said with a troubled look, "Ah, this is a splendid fracture." "A fracture?" I asked in surprise. Was I hit that hard? "Yes. Normally it would just be a crack, but you seem to be a little malnourished. Your bones look a bit weak. Make sure to get enough calcium and exposure to sunlight." As the pain gradually worsened, I received a painkiller injection. So will I be okay to go to work? I do clerical work. If we put a cast on to immobilize it, you should be fine. But you'll likely develop a fever, so how about you stay in the hospital tonight and tomorrow? Please. I decided to be hospitalized then and there. It was late and honestly, I was scared to go home alone now. The next morning, I explained the situation to my company and requested 3 days off. "Oh my, something terrible happened to you. It can't be helped if you were hospitalized for something like that. Take care." My boss at the company was surprised, but when I explained what happened to me and about my body, he readily approved my sudden time off. But in the end, I must have accumulated a lot of fatigue normally, and the fever that developed once didn't go down easily, so I ended up being hospitalized for 4 days. When I managed to convey this over the phone, Stephen spat out irritably. "You were attacked and hit on your way home? I want to go there right away, but I'm in the middle of work right now. Somehow manage on your own." It seemed like he was going to hang up immediately, so I clung to the phone and asked, "Then when are you coming home? At least tell me that." "Don't be stupid, I don't know until it's resolved." Anyway, I can't take my hands off this right now. I'm hanging up. Don't send me pointless messages either." And before I could say anything else, the call was cut off. Lying on the hospital bed, tormented by the gradually rising fever, I kept wondering why he was so busy. Then, when my fever started to go down, I decided to take the plunge and contact the law firm where Stephen works. The reason I could think to do such a thing was probably because my condition was different from usual. Even though the fever had gone down, I was still in a state of delirium, which allowed me to do it. But I didn't know the office phone number. So I searched for the name of the law firm in the state that I had heard about when we were dating and somehow found it. When I called, a woman's voice said,
Hello, Davis Law Firm. Hello, Davis Law Firm.
Excuse me, I'm the wife of Stephen Davis who works there. Please put my husband on the phone. I asked desperately, but the woman on the other end said in a puzzled voice, There's no one like that here?
What do you mean?
I continued asking in a trembling voice.
It's Stephen Davis. I'm his wife, Amy.
Hearing that, the woman on the other end said in a slightly lowered voice,
Let's talk a bit later. I'm Margaret Davis. I'll call you back, so please give me your phone number.
I found it a little strange that this person was also a Davis, but I honestly answered her calm voice. Then, 15 minutes later, the phone rang again.
Hello, you said your name is Amy Davis, right?
Yes, I'm the wife of Stephen Davis.
Excuse me, but what name is on your insurance card?
Cutting off my words, Margaret abruptly asked,
The name on my insurance card?
Yes.
Please tell me the name written on the paper insurance card you have.
Feeling puzzled, I took out the insurance card I had submitted just the other day. It's Amy Taylor.
Ah, I see.
Margaret let out a big sigh.
Amy, listen carefully. As I said before, my name is Margaret Davis. I'm Stephen Davis's wife. His real wife. What do you mean?
Forgetting what she had said before, I reflexively asked back.
Calm down, Amy. First, I want to know why you purposely called here. What in the world happened?
I'm sorry.
Actually, the night before last, I was hit with a bat by a random attacker on my way home from work.
My arm was broken.
A random attacker?
I heard her gasp on the other end. And now I have a fever and I'm hospitalized. I'm sorry. Surely the person there and my husband just have the same name, right? I'm sorry. For saying it like that.
No, that's okay. More importantly, is your fracture okay?
They said it'll be fine if it's immobilized for a while. But now, because of that, I have a fever and I'm also hospitalized due to overwork. This person named Margaret listened to my story without interrupting, making agreeing sounds in a calm voice.
The fatigue caught up with you too. By the way, listen. The name on the insurance card you just told me, Amy Taylor, that's your real name now.
Huh? I found myself asking back. I didn't understand what Margaret was saying.
Hey Amy, I want to talk with you at length after you're discharged from the hospital in a few days. Let's see, there are some things I want to look into, so let's meet again on a day off. You should see my personal number displayed there now, so if anything happens, please call me here.
Saying that, Margaret hung up the phone. I had no idea what she had told me. Insurance card? What in the world did she mean? I had simply continued using this one since graduating college and getting married because Stephen said it was fine, that's all. And yet, what in the world? A week later, I met up with Margaret at the hospital, taking the opportunity of a checkup. I had unexpectedly been able to take time off. I had told my company that I was discharged, but my boss said with a slightly troubled look, "You always work diligently, so please think about your health sometimes. And I'm sorry for always making you work late even though you're part-time. It's because I made you go home so late that you ended up encountering a random attacker." Hearing those words, I felt distressed thinking I had made everyone worry.
No, it's my selfishness, letting me work so much. If it disrupts the work plans, I'm truly sorry.
You know, it's good that you're obedient, but you're a little reckless sometimes.
That's right. Amy is a good girl, but I get worried about you sometimes.
Even my coworkers said such things for some reason. So I decided to take about 10 days off. This job is certainly clerical work, but it also involves a lot of using my arms. If I have to keep covering for that, my efficiency will also decrease. On top of that, I had accumulated quite a lot of paid leave. It wouldn't be bad to use some of it around now. When I contacted Margaret about this, she agreed to meet me at the hospital. We went from the hospital to a cafe to talk, in Margaret's car. Inside, the space was partitioned off for each table, so even if we talked a bit loudly, it wouldn't reverberate much to the surroundings. There, she got to the point.
Let me reintroduce myself. I'm Stephen Davis's wife, and we've been married for 10 years now. And I'm a lawyer at the same firm as him. You called yourself Stephen's wife, but you're not actually married to him.
After saying just that, Margaret placed a wedding photo stored in her smartphone and a copy of their family register in front of me. What I had unconsciously stopped thinking about after being told over the phone the other day was thrust in front of me again. Feeling like I might faint, Margaret said, "It's okay. Can you pull yourself together and listen?" She said with a serious expression.
Yes.
You know, I had been suspecting that he was cheating for a while. But he's in the same profession, so he wouldn't do anything to let me get evidence. I see, if I'm not married like Margaret says, then I'm the one he's cheating with. The weight of those words bore down on me as if it was a new realization.
So him only coming back once every 1 or 2 weeks for work was actually him going back to his real home?
Yes, Stephen certainly does have a lot of business trips, and he actually does go far away sometimes, and it's true that he's gone more often than not. Honestly, he only comes back home about that often too.
But why in the world? I thought I had been married to him all this time.
Margaret sighed. Amy, how old are you now? When you thought you got married, how many years ago was that?
My age? I'm 27. I thought I got married 5 years ago, at 22, right after graduating college.
You were young. And you said your current job is full-time part-time work, right? That must be tough. Wondering what she wanted to know, I nodded.
Oh, as I told you over the phone the other day, I'm taking some paid leave now, since it had accumulated. So now.
No, that's not what's tough. It's that you were tricked by him and taken away while you had no real-world experience. You were deceived by his smooth words. I was surprised that she spoke ill of him. Hey, haven't you ever thought it's strange that your insurance card can be used? Could you show it to me if you have it now? As she said, I took out my insurance card from my wallet. Margaret took it and looked at it, then muttered, "I thought so. You're still under your father's dependent coverage."
But I was able to use it. Is there a problem?
No, of course you can use it. It's not wrong. But the fact that you can use it means you're not married to him. In other words, your position is still ultimately your father's daughter, and from my perspective, you're my husband's mistress. My head spun at the reality thrust upon me that I wasn't married to Stephen. Then Margaret squeezed my hand as if to say it's okay. Strangely, I didn't feel any anger toward this person. No, that's not it. I just had no sense of reality. Poor thing, you were deceived by that man. But honestly, you were a blind spot for me.
A blind spot?
The one I suspected of being the mistress was this person. She showed me a photo of a certain woman. My eyes were drawn to the figure in that photo.
This person.
Do you know her? I reflexively let out an
"Oh,"
and took out my smartphone. Then I opened the photo folder, and there it was.
This.
I showed one photo to her.
This is the person who hit my arm with a bat.
The photo showed a woman in a jersey holding a bat. It was the same person as the woman in the photo she had just shown me.
Well done, Amy. Hey, did you show this to the police?
No, I just noticed now. I'm really slow to notice these things. Margaret silently grimaced at my words. Then she lightly lowered her eyes and said,
"Wait a moment,"
and started pondering something for a while. Eventually, she opened her eyes and asked,
"Hey, Amy, who do you think is responsible for what happened to your arm?"
She questioned me like that. Who? It's this person.
But I don't think the real cause is this person. That's why I want you to wait a bit before telling the police about this person and let me handle it for a little while, okay?
I silently nodded. I thought there was nothing I could do now, and I had no choice but to rely on this person. Then another week passed, and Stephen finally came home.
Welcome back. That was quite a long business trip. I was lonely.
I greeted Stephen and said this in a cheerful voice while hugging him. Then my arm cast happened to hit around his chest.
Ah, so this is the fracture mentioned in the message. Are you okay now? I wasn't okay. How many times do you think I wanted to contact you? I tried to send messages a few times, but I did as you said. You know, actually, I was hit with a bat.
Saying that, I smoothly separated from Stephen.
But I'm okay now. I properly went to the hospital and got examined. An ambulance came for me that time.
I purposely didn't mention the police.
By the way, actually, my friend is here today.
A friend? That's unusual. From work?
No, it's a friend I made recently. Hey, could you come over here for a bit? I want to introduce you.
I took his hand with a smile and led him toward the living room. When I opened the door, the two women who were sitting on the sofa watching TV turned around to face us.
You too, he is back.
Hey, welcome back, Stephen.
So you come back here too, huh? Margaret? And Jasmine. Why are you two together?
One was Margaret, and the other was Jasmine, the other mistress who had attacked me that time.
Come on, sit down, sit down.
And I pushed the frozen Stephen toward the two of them with my working hand. The two of them forced the shocked and powerless Stephen into a seat from both sides.
Why the hell are you here? Why? Because we became friends, you know?
At Jasmine's words, the three of us simultaneously said,
Yeah. Hey Stephen, you always said you were suffering because your wife looked down on you at the office and at home, and you wanted to punch her, so I went to teach her a lesson. But what, this Amy isn't even your wife? I ended up breaking her arm by mistake. It's your fault, you know? Huh, what the hell? Jasmine, you broke Amy's arm? So I thought I'd go to your wife's place, but when I followed you home and attacked the woman living there on the street at night, it was a huge mistake. I was just surrounding you, that's all, right?
That's right. Jasmine was the one who had attacked me. Margaret had originally visited this person, whom she had investigated, directly and explained what had happened, asking for her cooperation. In exchange, she would defend her in the assault case against me this time.
I never asked for that. Jasmine, did you really do it? Hitting Amy with a bat. Didn't ask? Didn't you think I'd do something like that? But you know, right now, I want to punch you.
Jasmine grinned nastily and slammed her right fist into her left palm several times.
Huh, why me? Are you stupid? No matter how much of a bitch I am, do you seriously think I'd cling to a guy who's dating 3 women at the same time? Just thinking that I was stuck on a man like this makes me feel like I'm really stupid and puts me in a bad mood.
She bluntly said. And I thought. I was really stupid too. I was just surrounded by this person, but I believed his words that we were married and assumed I had become his wife. Come to think of it, I only signed the marriage license. I left the submission to him. Why didn't Stephen try to go submit it together? It's obvious. There's no way he could submit it, so of course he wouldn't go together. I must have wanted to keep dreaming of being married to him without facing reality. That's why I couldn't think it was strange about the insurance card, which I should have noticed if I had looked into it a little.
So, I don't care about your excuses,
Margaret said to Stephen, who was trembling as he faced Jasmine, who looked like she might raise her hand at any moment.
With Amy being found, all the evidence of your cheating has been gathered. I told my father everything, you know, to your father-in-law.
Stephen's face changed color. That person must be important for his position.
Yes, I gathered the evidence and submitted it to my father, who had no eye for people and made me marry you based on your potential. And he had the rights to the firm transferred to me. So as the new director, my first decision is this. Stephen, you will leave the firm. And I will submit what you did to the Bar Association. What? Well, of course. That's my father's firm. You entered it as my husband and worked as the next director, but if we kept employing someone who would do something so legally questionable, it would be a credibility problem for our firm. There's no way my father would let me stay with someone like this. So, you'll write this too.
Margaret put divorce papers on the table and thrust them at him. Seeing that, words suddenly came out of my mouth too.
Stephen, You didn't even give me a divorce petition, let alone the marriage license from that time.
He raised his face at that. Grease sweat was flowing profusely from his forehead.
No, but you didn't ask anything. So you deceive young women all over the place? Hey, Margaret, this guy works with the law, right?
Yes, that's right. It's really shameful as a fellow professional.
Seeing him flustered like this in front of the two of them, I really started to feel pathetic. Not just him, but myself too. To think that I was just waiting patiently for this kind of person every day while worrying about various things. When that thought suddenly crossed my mind, Jasmine's voice reached my ears.
Hey, Margaret, can I sock this guy one?
What should we do? If you hit or hurt anyone else, the charges will increase, you know?
It's fine. Then Margaret will defend me with all her might, right?
Then Margaret smiled and said, "Yes, that might be okay." Saying that casually, she nonchalantly moved away from the two of them.
All right. Stop! Please stop it! What? Did you think I was going to punch you?
Jasmine promptly took something out of the bag she had brought. A red and yellow two-tone canned food. Moreover, it seemed to be slightly swollen. Then, Margaret quietly came over to me and whispered,
Listen, Amy, when Jasmine throws that at Stephen, get out of the house immediately.
Huh?
While such a conversation was exchanged between us, Jasmine turned to Stephen and said,
Thanks for everything. This is my gratitude for until now.
She threw the swollen canned food with all her might. With a thud, the canned food hit Stephen and fell.
Let's go.
Margaret gave the command. We quickly opened the living room door and headed straight for the front door. And just as we were about to close the door after leaving the room,
Wah!
We heard a loud scream from inside.
Close the door right away.
Margaret urged in a hurry. What in the world did Jasmine throw at Stephen?
Ha 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 ha. Yeah, it worked. The $65 I spent was worth it. Huh? $65? For that canned food?
Then Margaret also let out a loud laugh. Ha ha ha.
Well, that's about how much it costs. Because that canned food is surströmming.
As I tilted my head in confusion, Jasmine added,
It's said to be the world's smelliest canned food. If you leave it at room temperature, it ferments and explodes when it swells up that much. Man, I always wanted to try it. I never thought I'd end up throwing it at that guy, though.
And you even waited a bit at room temperature so it would properly explode, right? Margaret asked amidst her uncontrollable laughter.
That's why I told Amy to send her luggage to her parents' place or somewhere beforehand. This room will probably be contaminated and unusable for about a month.
Contaminated? The moment I heard that word, laughter welled up from the depths of my stomach for some reason. The image of Stephen, who had been pretending to be so cool until now, kept appearing and disappearing in my mind.
Well, Margaret, I'm going to turn myself in to the police, so come with me.
Right, there's also the matter of whether to press charges, so Amy, you come too.
Wait a second.
I told the two of them to step away from the door a little.
What are you going to do?
Taking a deep breath, I suddenly opened the door and shouted,
Stinky, stinky, stinky. I can't stay in a room like this anymore, so I'm never coming back. You've been deceiving me all this time. I really hate you now.
After saying all that in one go, I slammed the door shut. Blinking at the stimulating odor that leaked out and coughing, I laughed with all my might along with my tears for the first time in a long while. Immediately after that, the three of us headed to the police. However, I had decided to settle out of court. After all, Jasmine was also just another victim who ended up doing what she did because of Stephen. And I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of affinity toward Jasmine's actions throughout this whole thing. Toward the person who hit me with a bat? People might say I'm too much of a softie, but it's true that I'm ignorant. And I'm probably too much of a goody two-shoes and an idiot who doesn't know the ways of the world. But right now, the feeling of being fellow victims deceived by the same man is very strong for me. And also, Jasmine's method of revenge against Stephen was just too funny. Moreover, after hearing the story from Margaret, Jasmine immediately came to apologize to me and said she would properly pay for my medical expenses. She also said she wouldn't charge anything to Jasmine and me. As for me, There was also the fact that it was confirmed I had truly been told by him that we were married, didn't know about the existence of his household, and was completely deceived.
In other words, he liked young girls.
Margaret said after everything was sorted out.
Actually, you were dating him since you were a student too, right? Did Steven perhaps offer you money?
No, that's not it. I genuinely thought it was true love. I really loved him.
He must have taken advantage of that.
And she sighed again.
But still, the fact that I had such a man as my husband was terrible in itself.
By the way, Steven exploded the canned food inside that room, and the terrible smell permeated it to a frightening degree, making him unable to appear in public for a while. Of course, the room he had me staying in also became unusable because of the canned food. Apparently, even if you were to do house cleaning, it would require a special level of cleaning. And I heard from Margaret later that it cost quite a lot. On top of that, along with the divorce petition, he was also charged a large amount of compensation for his infidelity. There's also the matter of the bar association that Margaret mentioned when she said she would fire him from the firm. As a result of reporting Steven's actions to the bar association, he was removed from the association's registry. I don't know the details, but apparently, lawyers can't work unless they're registered with the bar association. Now, how will Steven pay for all these massive expenses? Well, that's none of my business. Even so, for someone who studied extremely hard to obtain a qualification that seems impossibly difficult to me, to lose the ability to use it because of something like this, could it be that Steven was even more of an idiot than me? In any case, the price he has to pay for what he did to us 3 women is high. I hope he will thoroughly reflect on his actions. After that, I returned to my parents' home and am currently preparing to start job hunting again once my arm heals. I quit the part-time job I had been working at for 5 years because I decided to move back in with my parents after this incident. When I went to my parents' place to send my belongings, Margaret came with me and put in a good word for me to my parents. She also introduced me to several law firms near my parents' home for my job search. So now I'm preparing for that job hunt. By the way, it seems my parents had a vague idea of where I was and what kind of life I was living. That's because the fact that I was using my insurance card under my father's dependent coverage means that the medical statements were being sent to my parents' home. So my parents automatically received notifications about where and how many times I went to the doctor. Looking at that, my parents were relieved that I wasn't suffering from any particularly serious illnesses or injuries and that I hadn't gotten pregnant. In other words, my parents were patiently waiting for me to wake up on my own. I was really an idiot. By the way, Margaret, Jasmine, and I have become close enough to create a group on social media and exchange messages. And we're also talking about having a meal together once I find a new job. At that time, we plan to laugh about Steven's current state as well. I wasted 5 years of my 20s, but from now on, I want to reflect on my own naivety and become able to manage on my own.
A life without kids is just miserable. My daughter Laura is both adorable and a genius.
William said that with a smirk, and I couldn't help but feel a surge of uncontrollable anger. It was like he'd forgotten all he's done to me, and then he just came up to talk to me with that nonsense. I couldn't help but be furious. However, I remembered the situation I was in and managed to suppress my anger. Trying to appear as cheerful as possible, I decided to reply to him. Even if he gets mad at it, it's nothing compared to what I've endured. I called my daughter, who was a little distance away, and proudly said, "Okay, let me also introduce my daughter, Jasmine." I'm probably wearing the kind of smile I imagine. While showing that to him, I hugged Jasmine, who ran up to me.
"What?"
He looked at us, his mouth agape in surprise. He probably couldn't accept the reality he had always looked down upon. His mistress Kate, who was grinning just like him until a moment ago, also seemed unable to hide her shock. While looking at them, I started talking to Jasmine. "My name is Isabel, and I'm a 51-year-old office worker. I have a daughter, and people are often surprised when I tell them she's 12. I did marry late, but there were reasons for that. I have a history of divorce, and I didn't have children at that time. I met my ex-husband William in an arrangement that was almost like an arranged marriage. A friend of mine worried about me always working and not getting married, and threw a party for me. That's where William took a liking to me, and I received his advances. Even so, I wasn't interested at first and was reluctant to respond to his actions. Yet, as he approached me persistently, I gradually started to return his feelings. Eventually, we started dating and soon got married. After marriage, William was serious about having children. Being in my late 30s, I felt a lot of pressure. I don't know if it was because of that, but we couldn't have a baby for a long time. Gradually, William's attitude turned cold, and he started to look down on me.
What, infertile? Were you here? Did you pick up the dry cleaning I asked for?
He called me infertile, treating me almost like a slave. It was so frustrating, I struggled to find a solution. I went to the hospital imagining the worst, but there was nothing wrong with me. I was even told that stress might be the cause, which left me feeling hopeless. I tried changing my diet, taking supplements. I tried everything, but still couldn't get pregnant. I suggested William get tested, thinking maybe the problem wasn't with me.
Listen, William. I went to the hospital, and they found nothing wrong.
So, maybe it's worth considering that the issue might be with you, and you should get tested. As soon as I said that, his face turned red with anger.
What? You're saying I'm the problem? It's just that you can't get pregnant, don't suspect me.
But there's nothing wrong with me, and I've been under treatment for a long time. If we still can't have a baby, it might be because of you.
No way. I'm always fine. The problem is definitely with you, okay?
He completely rejected my suggestion, blaming me. At first, I fought back, but it's hard when someone keeps saying you're the one at fault. Gradually, I became exhausted, and one day, his words made it clear that I couldn't do it anymore.
What's the point of being a woman if you can't even have a baby?
He said it so disdainfully, and I couldn't respond. It wasn't that I agreed with his words. Instead, I was shocked at why I had to be spoken to like that. I worked while managing household chores, and I thought I had devoted myself to him, who was also working. Nevertheless, just because I couldn't have a baby, I never expected to be so thoroughly negated. With no emotional support and losing my motivation, I couldn't bring myself to ask him to get tested again. The thought of hearing the same words again frightened me so much that I couldn't speak up. Sensing that, he started commanding me to do various things.
Man, I'm tired. I want a different drink, not the usual beer today. Hey, you can't get pregnant, so you must be free, right? Come home right now.
Laughing smugly, he treated me like a slave. If I showed any sign of arguing back, he'd hurl even more abuse at me. Still, I endured and just kept going day by day. You'd think I'd better divorce him if I'm putting up with all that. However, I married late and thought I wouldn't be able to marry again if I let that go. Also, I was embarrassed about divorcing and couldn't take that step. Time passed without me being able to do anything, and I turned 38. That's when things took a sudden turn. Even then, I was enduring harassment almost every day about infertility while continuing to work.
Hey, you should know what I don't like by now. I can't eat such terrible food. This is why infertile women.
That day, after he snapped at me like that, I couldn't hold back anymore and argued back.
What does the meal have to do with not having a baby? I can't stand it anymore. Enough is enough.
When I said so, William jumped up and started yelling at me.
What's with that attitude? You can't even fulfill your role as a woman, and now you complain to me when I come back from work.
Suddenly bombarded with nonsensical complaints, I got furious.
What do you mean by a woman's role? If it's about having a baby, you have a responsibility too. I got tested and there was nothing wrong. But you refused to get tested, trying to escape your responsibility. And yet, you only complain about me, which I think is unfair.
He seemed a bit taken aback by my rare rebuttal, but his silence was brief, and he soon started hurling abuses again.
Why are you so stubborn? In times like these, she would immediately reflect and apologize.
Hearing his words, it was my turn to be stunned. Before I could ask who he was talking about, he made a sheepish look and quickly looked away. Then, he left the house without a word. He didn't come home that day, and my distrust in him grew. From his words, it was clear there was another woman. That meant he was cheating, and if I pursued it, I might be able to divorce him. It wouldn't be because I couldn't have children, but because of William's affair. Thinking that, I soon took action. I searched online for a nearby private detective agency and hired them. William was apparently cheating recently. I had them investigate his mistress and his behavior. A few weeks after my request, the results came from the agency. During that time, William would come home but wouldn't meet my eyes. He seemed to be avoiding me, and the constant verbal abuse had stopped. Surprised at how comfortably I was living, I regretted not taking action sooner. I should have done this earlier. While thinking that, I looked at the report. It contained the fact that William was having an affair with evidence. It also included a report on his mistress. Her name was Kate. She was 23 years old, naturally younger than both of us. It seemed they started dating soon after I first suggested William get tested. So, he had been cheating for a few years. Angered by the fact, I decided to divorce him and started preparations. While I was preparing, he stayed quiet. That allowed me to steadily proceed, and I finally confronted him about the divorce.
William, there's something I need to talk about. It's not about the test, it's more important.
When I said that, he looked annoyed as he was just back from work.
What now at this time? I've got something to tell you, too. Make it quick.
Saying so wearily, he still seemed to be listening while operating his mobile phone. Before he changed his mind, I quickly presented him with the report from the private detective agency.
You're having an affair. I've had it properly investigated, so there's no escaping it. With both the baby issue and your affair, I can't take it anymore. I want a divorce.
Saying that, I also presented a half-filled divorce application as a sign of my resolve. Far from being flustered, he smirked and took the divorce papers from my hand.
Ha, you're well prepared. Such perfect timing makes me doubt your predictive abilities.
As he said that and operated his mobile phone, the sound of the front door opening echoed.
Good evening. Nice to meet you. I'm Kate, the one who's going to marry William next.
Entering from the entrance was the person in the photo enclosed in the report. Younger and cuter than she appeared in the photo, Kate greeted me with a grin.
I was just about to introduce you today. I never imagined you'd prepare the divorce papers. If you were always this considerate, I might have stayed, but it's too late now.
While half laughing, he entered the living room with the divorce papers in hand. Stunned by the sudden turn of events, I stood frozen, unable to grasp the situation. After a while, William came out of the living room, having signed the divorce papers. Handing them to me with a smirk, he said,
"It saved me a lot of trouble. We're no longer a couple, so leave immediately. Kate's pregnant, and I want her to spend her time as stress-free as possible."
With Kate and William smirking maliciously, I lost myself. I snatched the divorce papers from his hand and rushed into my room. Then, I grabbed my already packed bags and left the house without a word. 13 years later since then, I was visiting a project I had been involved in that had just been completed. I work as a specialist consultant, and this time I was in charge of designing a condominium that was disaster-resistant and supportive of childcare. At that time, after being introduced to Kate by William, I took refuge in a nearby Holiday Inn. I waited for dawn, then submitted the divorce papers to City Hall and moved from hotel to motel. Eventually, I moved into a house and devoted myself to my work. My mood lightened after divorcing William, and work went smoothly, with increased business opportunities and networking. Thanks to that, I was appointed as a project leader, which led to this urban development project. Now that the long-term project was finally complete, I felt relieved. There was a small event, and the place was crowded. Suddenly, I heard a familiar, unpleasant voice.
"Hey, long time no see. Still all alone? I'm here to buy a condo for a family of 3. Not that it matters to you."
I regretfully turned towards the voice and regretted it. There stood William and Kate. Between them, there was their daughter, who must have been in Kate's womb at that time.
A life without kids is just miserable. My daughter is both adorable and a genius.
Seeing William's smirking face, uncontrollable anger surged within me. It was like he forgot all he'd done, casually speaking to me like that. I couldn't help but be furious. As remembering my situation, I managed to suppress my anger. Trying to appear as cheerful as possible, I decided to reply to him. Even if he gets angry, it's nothing compared to what I've endured. I called my daughter, who was a little distance away, and said proudly, "Okay, let me also introduce my daughter." I was probably wearing the kind of smile I had imagined. While showing that to him, I hugged Jasmine, who ran up to me. "Huh?" He looked at us with his mouth agape in surprise. He probably couldn't accept the reality he had always looked down upon. Grinning just like him until a moment ago, Kate seemed unable to hide her shock. While looking at them, I spoke to Jasmine. "Found a spot you want to shoot at?" When I asked, Jasmine smiled brightly and nodded.
"I want to shoot in front of the flower bed you insisted on to the end."
She pointed to the flower bed and ran towards it, picking up the equipment beside me. As I watched her tomboyish figure, Kate screamed,
"That's Jasmine from the video sharing site, right? Why is she calling you Mom?"
At Kate's words, their daughter spoke up.
"That's right. Wow, meeting the real deal. Hey, can I get an autograph?" "That's a good idea, Laura. You really are a genius."
Impressed by their arrogant attitude, true to their nature as parent and child, I shrugged my shoulders and firmly declined.
"Sorry, but you can't.
Jasmine does video posting voluntarily. She enjoys shooting and editing.
It's not about being famous. Sure, she's become well known, but that's not what she wants to do." "Well, it wouldn't hurt, right? After all, Laura is a genius. A combination of a popular person and a genius makes a good story."
Listening to William proudly proclaiming his daughter's genius, I asked, weary,
"What exactly makes your daughter a genius?" "So far, I only see a lack of common sense and arrogance." "How dare you say that? Laura has a lot of things to be good at."
I wanted to see concrete examples of her genius, but found nothing specific in Kate's claims, causing me to sigh. Seeing that, William, displeased with my attitude, began to brag more about Laura.
"You know, Laura never sticks to anything. Too much of a genius, she masters everything too quickly. She's tried so many hobbies but gets bored as soon as she excels. Oh boy, the troubles of having a genius child."
Hearing what hardly sounded like a boast, I grew tired. Without much response to his bragging, I moved towards where Jasmine was filming. Behind me, William's family were saying something, but I ignored them and called out to my daughter. "Jasmine, how's the shooting going? Let's go to a cafe when you're done." Jasmine was surrounded by a crowd of people watching her film. Some of them seemed to realize she was Jasmine, making the scene quite lively.
"Just need to shoot the ending, and we're done. Hang on a bit longer,"
she cheerfully answered, waving to the people around her before starting the final scene.
"Hey, Jasmine! Film with me."
In an oblivious moment, Laura interrupted the filming. Noticing it, Jasmine smiled at Laura and resumed shooting. After finally finishing, Jasmine found herself encircled by onlookers. Like Laura, they asked for autographs, but she politely declined. Instead, she chatted and interacted joyfully with those who approached her. She was continuing her activities because she enjoyed them, not because she wanted fame. Despite her fame, she never boasted about it. Of course, she hadn't thought about giving autographs, so she couldn't offer one. Then, it would be good to communicate a bit as a way of returning the favor to those who approached her. That's what Jasmine has been thinking and acting on. Laura had interrupted her earlier, but Jasmine wanted to maintain her composure. In fact, I wonder if Laura really understood Jasmine's gentle refusal. After finishing conversations with most people, Jasmine was about to leave. Laura approached her predictably. She didn't understand Jasmine's intentions.
"The filming's done, right? So, film with me next."
Seeing Jasmine staring at Laura in astonishment, I couldn't hold back and intervened.
"Sorry, but Jasmine doesn't do collaborations. That smile earlier was just a polite response to your interruption during filming." "What's that, pleasantries? Learning such things as a child, aren't you raising her wrong?"
Kate interjected sarcastically, looking down at Jasmine with crossed arms. Jasmine briefly frowned but remained silent, not retorting to Kate. Seeing that, Kate became more confident and pressed further.
So, are you saying Laura isn't worth filming with? Laura can do anything, she's a genius. It's actually an opportunity to enhance your image. Why don't you read the situation better?
Overwhelmed by that, Jasmine looked at me for guidance. Receiving her gaze, I sighed and replied to Kate, "Enough already."
You keep calling your daughter a genius, but there's not a single concrete example. Isn't there something more substantial to boast about?
As I said it, the people around us, who had been listening to our conversation, agreed. Pressed by their words, Kate made a displeased face, but Laura seemed unfazed. Instead, she proudly boasted about her accomplishments.
I got an award at a piano recital. It was for practicing well. And also, at dance school for learning a whole song. I also got an award for never missing school. I've been awarded a lot.
Laura was at least over grade 7. Thinking about it, her statements seemed awkward, to say the least. Unaware of that, Laura looked at us expectantly for praise. I exchanged a troubled look with Jasmine, and we could only make helpless faces. The people around us seemed to feel the same, with some even bursting into laughter. Even Kate seemed to read the atmosphere and tried to change the subject forcibly.
By the way, since you're active like this, how much do you earn? You can't possibly afford to live in a condo like this, can you?
Her question seemed desperate, but I decided to reply to avoid rehashing the atmosphere.
Thankfully, we're quite popular on the video sharing site. Of course, we earn an income, but it's saved for Jasmine's future and for buying necessary filming equipment. Sure, this condo is attractive, but we have a house, so we don't need it. Besides, I was part of creating this place, so the success fee is substantial. My current husband runs a company, and combined with his income, moving here wouldn't be a bad idea.
I told her everything she might have wanted to know. Predictably, Kate looked displeased and glared at Jasmine and me. Hearing my story, William seemed too surprised to retort. Whereas, Kate was ever bold, and tried to ingratiate herself with me.
So, you created this place. Then, with just a word from you, we could live here, right? Our kids are about the same age, so out of kindness, could you help us?
I couldn't understand what she meant by kindness, but I had no intention of agreeing. Just as I was about to firmly refuse, Laura asked eagerly by misunderstanding something.
Can you really help us live in this condo? We want to live here. Please.
At her words, I sighed deeply in exasperation. I decided to set the record straight for once and all.
Sorry, but I can't guarantee you can live here. Sure, I might be able to refer you to the management company with my connections, but there are screenings. Things like what job you do, your income, and your prospects. I'm not in charge of the screenings, so it's not guaranteed.
It's up to you, so good luck with that. Hearing that, Kate made her face, while Laura didn't seem to fully understand. Then William butted in, making an unreasonable demand.
My daughter's asking, so make it happen. If you have the connections for creating this place, get us through the screening.
Everyone around whispered at his absurd demand. I pondered how to explain the obvious fact, my head aching.
You can't just interfere in the screening process, can you? That's obviously out of my jurisdiction. If you want to live here, overcome it with your own efforts.
When I said that, William suddenly became enraged and started to rampage. He began ripping out the flowers from the nearby flower bed and throwing them at me. I stood in the way to protect Jasmine from getting hit, while scolding him. However, for some reason, Kate and Laura followed his lead and started doing the same. Furthermore, while hurling the flowers, Kate shouted insults at us, and Laura hurled verbal abuse at Jasmine. I was busy protecting Jasmine, but people around us started to intervene to stop them. Nonetheless, the three of them refused to listen and kept throwing anything they could grab. Kate picked up a stone lying nearby and was about to throw it. I grabbed her arm to stop her from hitting Jasmine, but Kate carried away and pushed me. Thus, I fell into the flower bed, hitting my head. Seeing that, people around us condemned them more vehemently and tried desperately to stop them. Yet, the three of them continued to act wildly and were soon restrained. Someone had called the police, though I didn't know who, and they arrived upon hearing the commotion.
Who called the cops?
As the police officers restrained him, William shouted, but no one responded. Kate also was restrained by the police and tried to find out who had reported them. Laura stopped her tantrum but began crying upon seeing her parents being held by the police. The noisy scene was suddenly overtaken by the commanding voice of a police officer.
You're under arrest for obstructing official duties.
With those words, the place became silent instantly. It seemed William had attacked a police officer and was being arrested on the spot. Holding my head and hugging Jasmine, who was close to tears, I watched the scene unfold. As William was taken away, Kate and Laura were also escorted to the police station. The three of them were put in a police car and gradually disappeared from view. After such a huge uproar caused by William's family, I felt drained as they were easily taken away by the police. Meanwhile, I came to myself by Jasmine's desperate yell.
Mom, you're hurt. Should we go to the hospital? Otherwise, you will.
Affected by the chaos, Jasmine finally burst into tears. I hugged her, apologizing for involving her in such an incident. The people around us also expressed their concern, making me feel cared for. Though I was in pain, the fact that Jasmine was safe made it seem insignificant. Every time someone asked, I assured them I was fine, and soon the sound of an ambulance siren was heard. Apparently, someone had called an ambulance as well. When the ambulance arrived, I was taken away with the police officers. As I boarded the ambulance with Jasmine, I glanced back at the flower bed where the flowers had been torn out. As being involved in the construction of a large condominium, I had wanted to mitigate its oppressive presence. So, I established a park on the property and planted flower beds there. I hoped the park would become a place of rest and foster enjoyable conversations. I met my current husband in a park, taking a break from work and admiring the flower beds. He approached me, and we started talking, eventually becoming close. Initially, we only met during lunch breaks, but gradually we began dining out and eventually married. Soon after, we were blessed with Jasmine, and despite it being a late pregnancy, she was born safely. That park with the flower beds had brought me happiness. Therefore, in the projects I was involved in, I wanted to create opportunities for others to find happiness. That was the idea behind that flower bed. Its destruction saddened me deeply, and I was quite shocked. Upon reaching the hospital, treatment began immediately, and I needed a few stitches. Thankfully, it wasn't visible, much to my relief. Seeing it, Jasmine seemed reassured, and by the time we left the hospital, she was smiling again. While waiting for the bill, I was questioned by the police and decided to file a complaint. I also decided to hire a lawyer and ensure that William's family faced appropriate consequences. Thanks to that, Kate was arrested for assault. According to the lawyer, with her parents in police custody, Laura was taken in by Kate's parents. I thought that was unfortunate enough, but she was in for strict re-education from her grandparents. Taken in by her grandparents, she was apparently reprimanded and criticized greatly for her usual behavior. Due to her young age, it seems she is being disciplined strictly for rehabilitation. It will likely lead to challenging days ahead for not only William and Kate but also for Laura. As for me, my injury has been healing well since then. I had the stitches removed recently, so there's no significant injury anymore. Jasmine has become even more popular since that day and has been busy. It turns out that it was one of her followers who called the police and ambulance. After the filming ended, sensing the tense atmosphere, Jasmine quickly switched to live streaming. Thanks to that, when the brawl escalated, one of her followers took action. We are truly grateful for that, as it helped bring the situation under control. Afterward, Jasmine wanted to thank the person and made a call out in a video, but no one came forward. So, we decided to post another video expressing our gratitude. When we went to film the video at the park where the disturbance occurred, we found the flower bed beautifully restored. Apparently, volunteers had fixed it up after the incident, which was a relief. Since then, things have been going surprisingly well. My work on the condominium has led to an increased evaluation of my job. I've been promoted and now am the head of the planning department. Jasmine's video views have skyrocketed, and she continues to post videos joyfully. My current husband is very concerned about us and has been quite worried. Though I'm fully healed and there are no hindrances to my life, he still occasionally checks on my injury. I'm really happy to be with the kind-hearted husband and Jasmine grow up healthy. There are no problems in my work or family life. I look forward to spending more happy times with three of us.
I got a huge sum of money, and you just got an old house and a mere field?
My brother Robin, who unexpectedly received a large inheritance, mocks me.
To think that this is how they treat their daughter who has always taken care of and nursed them. You must not have been loved.
His words are infuriating, but I don't talk back. Just you wait. I won't let this setback keep me down. Driven by anger towards Robin, I worked hard to restore the neglected field. My name is Carol, a 50-year-old housewife. I've been married to my husband Justin for 25 years, and our children have all grown up and become independent. I thought we could live a peaceful and enjoyable life together, just the two of us. But life doesn't always go as planned. As soon as our children became independent, I began to take care of our parents. Justin's parents had passed away long ago, so the ones I cared for were my own. My parents, who ran a farm, were always confident in their physical strength and were the picture of health. I often helped them, especially during the harvest season. The freshly picked vegetables were truly delicious. Juicy and sweet vegetables. I fondly remember them because I can no longer savor that taste. My parents couldn't defy aging and had to retire as their legs grew weaker.
I really wanted to continue for longer.
My father Stuart said with a weak smile.
I wish I could let Carol taste those vegetables again.
My mother Olivia expressed her regret.
It would have been great if Robin had taken over.
My father said, feeling down. I have an older brother, Robin, 2 years older than me. Robin has always been irresponsible, acting on a whim and doing whatever he pleases. He barely attended high school and eventually dropped out, claiming it was too much trouble. He left home, never settling into a steady job, working odd jobs here and there, and then would suddenly return home to demand money from our parents. Yet, because he is their son, they couldn't be harsh to him. Robin also stopped visiting the house after our parents quit farming.
There will be no money received from parents living on a pension,
he used to say. If there's no money, he has no business with them. As much as he is my brother, he's the worst. I try to forget such brother exists, but he's still family. Sometimes, even my parents would worry.
I wonder if that child is doing all right.
They would say. But after they quit farming, they aged quickly. Maybe things would have been different if they had continued farming, even just as a hobby. By the time I started regretting it, they had already aged significantly and both became bedridden.
Sorry, Carol. We're causing you trouble.
My apologetic father and mother were met with my smiling denial. I am who I am today because of you both. Let me repay you. As I said this, my mother teared up and thanked me. Taking care of them was hard work, but my children were already independent, and I wasn't working since I was a housewife. I had thought about getting a part-time job once the kids were independent, but we weren't struggling financially, so I could put that off. After discussing with Justin, I decided to stay at my parents' house to take care of them.
I don't think they have much time left.
The shock of hearing this from the doctor was immense. I called Robin, crying.
Won't you come to see our parents?
Irresponsible as he may be, Robin is still my brother. To our parents, he is their beloved son. Surely, Robin remembers being loved by them. That's why I wanted him to see them one last time, but Robin's answer was terrible.
Huh? Why should I?
I'm busy, you know.
Busy? Are you working? Like I'd bother with that.
Yeah, I'm doing day labor.
I worked yesterday, so I thought I might go see some horses today. Going to see horses? You mean betting on horse racing, right?
As expected, Carol, you know me well.
What are you thinking? You prioritize gambling over visiting our parents?
It's more important to me than life itself.
You're the worst!
Furious at Robin's extremely disappointing behavior, I hung up the phone. After that, Robin never came to visit our parents at all. Day by day, both of them continued to weaken. And then, suddenly, my father passed away, followed by my mother the next day. They were a loving couple until the end. Once I had finished crying, busy time awaited me. Organizing a funeral for both of them was a huge task. With Justin's help and our 2 sons, we somehow managed it. It should have been something to discuss and arrange with Robin, but he never showed up. I managed to contact him, but...
Huh? Our parents' funeral?
I'm busy, I won't come.
Just handle it however on your end.
And with that, he hung up the phone. Handle it however? That's not possible. Even at 52, Robin remains incredibly irresponsible. Angry at Robin, the tearful funeral came to an end. And then, some time later, Robin finally returned to our family home. It was outrageous he didn't even come to the funeral, but the reason for his return was simple. It was to discuss the inheritance.
Hey, Carol, long time no see. You've aged quite a bit.
Leave it alone. You've aged too, Robin.
I'm still younger looking than you, since I'm single and didn't age from raising kids. Maybe I look like your younger brother now?
I was appalled that these were his first words after meeting his sister for the first time in a while. Despite claiming to enjoy his bachelor life, Robin looked significantly aged.
Did you visit their graves? Why would I do such a meaningless thing?
Do you think the dead can see that? It's not about that. I was irritated by Robin's attitude, showing no sense of loss for our parents, but arguing with him was pointless. I decided it was best to get the discussion over with quickly and took my seat. Well then, let's proceed, please. I said this to the lawyer present. Indeed, our parents had prepared a proper will. Under the supervision of the lawyer, we began to open the will.
What does it say? What's my share? Hold on a minute.
Robin eagerly leaned in as soon as the envelope was opened. I sighed at his impatience. Before my exasperated gaze, the lawyer spread out the will. As a result, Robin was to inherit cash. I was to inherit the family home and the field, the workplace where our parents had toiled. Upon hearing this, Robin,
Haha. Can you believe that? That's just great, isn't it hilarious?
Bursted out laughing. Cash, it's this statement, right? Wow, $300,000? Is this for real? Amazing. Farming really pays off. Along with the will, there was a bank account statement kept by the lawyer. It was indeed a significant amount. For Robin, who never had a steady job and lived day to day, this was a fortune. I was also a bit surprised to learn such an amount was left behind. Though they worked hard, my parents, whose hobbies in entertainment were farming, probably didn't have much use for money.
And? What about you, Carol?
With a mocking smile, Robin looked at me, still laughing. His question revealed his unpleasant character, even though he had heard the contents of the will. This house and the field.
Ha ha ha. Really?
Robin, holding his stomach, laughed heartily. Patience, just be patient. I reminded myself desperately, trying to contain my anger.
I get a huge sum of money, and you just get an old house and a mere field.
Robin said amidst his intense laughter.
This is how they treat their daughter who took care of and nursed them? You weren't loved at all.
I felt my blood boil but somehow managed to hold back. Arguing here would be meaningless. Indeed, the value of this house and field combined doesn't come close to the cash amount Robin inherited. Our parents wanted me to keep this house and field, our family home. So, I must endure. I know better than anyone that my parents loved me.
Well, the eldest son is always loved, right? And I was the favorite son. I can understand why our parents felt that way.
Finally stopping his laughter, Robin flaunted the bank account statement right in front of my eyes. So, that's how it is. I'm taking this with me. As if it was that simple. I didn't want any disputes over the inheritance later. The lawyer had prepared the documents, so Robin signed them and left. The moment Robin was out of sight,
Never come back!
I shouted. I'll forget about Robin. Likely, I'll never meet him again. Forgetting such a despicable person is best, a realization that came to me a year after my parents passed away. After completing various inheritance documents and procedures, and as I was clearing out the now empty family home, time seemed to fly by. Now, the once busy family home was empty. I have a house built by Justin, and to live here, as Robin said, is too old-fashioned. Maybe I should sell it sensibly. But the thought of losing my childhood home feels sad. Lost in these thoughts, I sat in the empty house. Suddenly, my eyes caught sight of a hoe in the garden. In this day and age, it's rare to use a hoe. Yet, my father preferred to use it. Stored out of reach during my childhood for safety. The iron part was now completely rusted and the handle severely decayed. It barely retained its original shape, but I touched it gently. What came to mind was the image of my father joyfully working in the fields, sweating, with my mother laughing beside him. Those were nostalgic, dearly cherished times. Quietly closing my eyes and indulging in these memories, I opened them with resolve and decided.
All right.
Farming? Yeah. Well, it's more like an extension of home gardening, a hobby. Isn't that nice? Having inherited the field, I thought to try something with it. When I discussed it with Justin, he easily agreed. Really? It's the field your parents left behind, you should try it. I couldn't be more grateful for Justin's support. With advice from a farmer acquaintance of my father, I began tending to the neglected field. I tried growing the same vegetables my father did, as well as experimenting with new varieties. It turned out to be a challenging task.
Farming is hard.
I had some experience with home gardening. But this was a whole different level. Not just the vastness of it, but also because these weren't just vegetables for personal consumption. Doing it seriously is this tough. Reviving the depleted soil alone was a challenge. Deciding on the right vegetables for the soil was tough. What about the seasons? The pests? Wild birds, too, turned out to be adversaries. Not only did I have to grow the crops, but I also had to think about protective measures. The work didn't progress easily, and I encountered many failures.
I can't believe you're doing all this. As a rich man like me, it's unimaginable.
That was Robin, who had called just to look down on me. Somehow, he had heard that I had started farming and called to comment. As usual, his words were discouraging, so I quickly hung up. Forget it. I have to forget that. Channeling my anger towards Robin into motivation, I tirelessly worked on the field. Farming equipment, even secondhand, was expensive, but I considered it a necessary investment and used my savings. It's your savings, so I won't say anything. The generous Justin said that to me. Although it was my savings, any money I had from before I was married was long gone, and what I used was really money Justin had given me for my allowance, saved over time. Even so, Justin didn't mind and supported me, which moved me to tears. I fell in love with him all over again. My sons also helped, researching on the internet and sharing information with me. The farmers who were acquaintances of my father were all kind people. Apart from the infuriating Robin, I was truly in a blessed environment, which allowed me to focus on farming. What started as a hobby quickly became a passion, and I got serious about it. I guess I really am my parents' daughter. As I thought this, time passed by. And then, I did it. Finally, the first harvest from my field. Though the produce wasn't as succulent and sweet as my parents', the yield was modest. What mattered was that I had accomplished it. I felt satisfied. Hey, not bad for a first-timer. Those encouraging words came from Mike, a farmer who had been a great help. He had always been concerned about the condition of my field. Mike's praise, reminiscent of a man about the same age as my father, deeply touched my heart. Adjust the amount of fertilizer and water a bit more. Ah yes, Stuart used to use that particular fertilizer. There was still so much I didn't know. Gathering every bit of information I could, I was determined to get closer to replicating my parents' tastes. Gradually, the field became more impressive. What started as a small corner was now a fully tended field. Days of trial and error with various crops. Gradually, the quality of the vegetables I grew improved, and eventually.
Wow, another bountiful year.
Thank you.
Please continue to supply to us. Of course, thank you very much.
My vegetables had reached a point where they could be sold. I even gained a favored business partner. A TV station even came to do a feature on me, a housewife who started farming and found success. Before I knew it, the vegetables I grew had become popular. But I couldn't have done it alone. Many people helped me, and above all, it was the wisdom my father had passed on to me. Yet, there was still much to do. I was far from achieving the taste of my father's produce. As I clenched my fist, determined to work harder, that's when I heard it.
What's this all about?
A voice I thought I had pushed to the edge of my memory. As I was about to head to the field, I heard the forgotten voice and turned around.
Robin!
It had been years. I could barely recognize him as Robin, but there was still a semblance of him. It wasn't just aging.
Robin, you've changed so much.
Yeah, I'm shining, right? But forget that. Noticing my gaze fixed on his head, Robin yelled angrily. However, his anger didn't frighten me at all. It's almost laughable. I want to laugh. But I knew laughing would only make things more complicated, so I desperately tried to hold it back. My cheeks were trembling, trying to suppress a smile.
What brings you here, Robin?
It's been a long time. I thought we would never meet again. I never expected Robin to visit the family home again. Robin pointed to the house standing tall behind me.
What is this?
He yelled. What do you mean? It's the house where you were born and raised.
I know that. But it used to be dirtier. Why is it so clean now?
Indeed, the once old and dirty house I had considered selling had been refurbished and was now quite beautiful. Why? Because I had it repaired.
Where did you get the money for that?
I earned it.
How?
I wish he wouldn't yell every time. Although we are approaching our 60s, my hearing is still fine. You know I started farming, right? The vegetables I grew on the field I inherited became popular, and the business is thriving.
What?
After many struggles and hard work, my business had finally taken off. And then Robin showed up. I had a bad feeling, and as expected, Robin began to insinuate.
So, that field had great value, huh?
Huh? What are you talking about?
There's no way a complete amateur like you could run a profitable farming business so easily.
Of course, it wasn't easy at all.
That land must have been golden soil, right?
He completely disregarded all the hard work I'd put in. And what's this about golden soil?
It must have been incredibly nutrient-rich, powerful soil, right? You knew that and kept quiet.
No, what are you talking about?
I know the law. If a property is later found to be more valuable, the inheritance can be redivided. I'm going to file an objection. We'll redo the inheritance division, and I'll take the field.
Are you stupid?
Yes, I'm stupid. I mean, no, I'm not.
Honestly, he is being stupid. I don't know where he got his information, but flaunting such superficial knowledge is just foolish. Sighing deeply. The value of the field hasn't changed. I said.
Liar!
Why would I lie? If you doubt it, why don't you have a real estate agent or someone appraise the land?
You said it, then I'll do just that. You'll regret this.
I won't. The land prices around here haven't changed much since the beginning.
Really?
If you doubt it, ask a real estate agent, like I said. Robin's confidence seemed to wane as I firmly stated this. His face began to cloud over with doubt. But you're actually making a profit, right? It's because of the field, right? Because of the field. Look, yes, I started farming because I had that land, and as a result, it's been profitable.
See, I told you so.
Ah, he's so annoying. I was gradually getting fed up with Robin's complete misunderstanding.
All right, enough.
Fed up with the conversation, I shouted dismissively.
Fine. Robin can use half of the field. Do whatever you like with it.
Yeah.
Robin, as if he had achieved complete victory, thrust his fist into the air. But despite my dismissive shout, I was quite calm inside. Well, let him try. Robin never helped with the farming when our parents were around. I wondered how he would approach it. I'll be watching closely.
Help me.
Wow, that was quick. It had only been a month since Robin started farming. I divided the field in half and let Robin use the barren part, but he gave up within just a month and came asking for help. Huh? Help with what?
I have no clue what to do.
I thought as much. The field was poorly maintained, with no preparation for planting whatsoever. What had he been doing this past month?
It's strange, isn't it? This field is supposed to be golden soil, right? I sowed seeds, but why aren't they growing properly?
Still on about the golden soil, huh? And thinking that just sowing seeds is enough? If it was that easy to grow delicious crops, everyone would be doing it. You need to study more. Maybe in a few years, it might become profitable? I was about to dismiss him, but then Robin, looking like he might cry, pleaded with me. Please, no snotty tears.
Help me out. You're my sis, right?
I don't want to think of someone who couldn't even come to our parents' final moments as a brother.
Don't start calling me sis just because you need something. I coldly brushed him off, and Robin hung his head right there.
I'm already busy with my own field. I got here with the help of many people. You should work hard and become someone who can also receive help. Like I said earlier, you need to persevere for a few years, and then.
I can't afford to be leisurely about this.
I was about to leave Robin, who showed no willingness to try, but then he looked at me with a serious expression.
I can't wait years or even months. I'm on the brink of a debt repayment deadline.
He shouted.
Debt. Yes. I have huge debts.
Why? You inherited $300,000 in cash, right? I spent it.
What? I poured it all into gambling, and now it's all gone. What?
I hated the idea of working again, so I tried to make a big win with loans, but that's gone too. Then I heard you were making money from farming, so I thought I'd try it too. But why isn't it working for me? Why am I not making any money?
How should I know?
I was astounded and lost for words. Robin had squandered the significant inheritance from our parents in just a few years. And now he thought he could easily make money from farming? It was ridiculous.
Carol, please, I'm begging you to help.
I refuse. No matter how much Robin pleaded, I couldn't bring myself to help him. Maybe if he had shown some determination to try on his own, I might have offered some assistance. But Robin was always relying on others. His irresponsibility unchanged.
Please, help me. The debt collectors are coming soon.
I left Robin shouting and walked away from the field. I don't know what became of him after that. I heard rumors that he was being chased by debt collectors. But nothing beyond that. Eventually, the field returned to my care. The farming, now on a larger scale, was going well. Justin, who helped on his days off, massaged my shoulders as I worked.
Maybe I could join you in farming after I retire?
Justin had recently suggested this. And it made me very happy. Our sons also seemed quite interested, maybe they'll join in too. The house and field protected by my father and loved by my mother. I wonder if my parents would be pleased to see them come back to life.
Dad, Mom, I'll keep taking care of the field.
Aiming to recreate the delicious vegetables they grew, I'll keep working hard. So please, both of you, watch over us. One day, as the end of the year was approaching, I received a panicked call from my son's stepdaughter, Aurora, urging me to come to their house immediately. I drove to my son's house, a place I hadn't visited for a while. Just then, Grace?
Grandma!
My granddaughter Grace, sitting on the concrete steps of the entrance, was hugging her knees, looking cold in her school tracksuit.
What's going on? Why are you out here in such light clothing? And where are your mom and dad?
They went on an overseas trip with my sister.
What? Anyway, get in the car. You're freezing.
In a rush, I got Grace in the car and bought her a warm drink at the first grocery store I saw. Later, when I met with Aurora at my house, I was infuriated by what my son and his wife had done. These children relied on me, so I felt a sense of duty to help them.
Aurora, do you have the keys? To their house?
Yes.
Then let's go now. And just take what's important.
What are we going to do, Grandma?
I smiled.
We don't need that house anymore, do we?
My name is Arya, 64 years old. I lost my husband 2 years ago and now live alone. Still, my days are fairly busy. Because I'm wrapped up in managing what my husband had left behind. When I married 40 years ago, my in-laws were what you might call an old family in the countryside. I never imagined I'd end up managing this large house. My family home was within a train ride to the city center. Yes, my husband was my college classmate. We got married right after graduation. I moved to this unfamiliar countryside, relying solely on him. I was surprised to see my husband, who until then had been a mere student like myself, suddenly being treated as the son and heir of a prominent local family. Karen, my mother-in-law at the time, thoroughly instilled in me the importance of treating one's husband with due respect. Her words were the law in this area, and although it was frustrating, I understood and complied. Thanks to that, even now, with no one left, I'm still treated with a certain respect as the manager of this house and land. I got married at a time when ordinary people were yearning to move out to the city center. Back then, I was seen as an oddity for coming all the way to the countryside. Karen probably gave me strict training to quickly dispel such views from the locals. And then, we had a child soon after our marriage. It was a boy, and he was celebrated by the people around us as the heir, including Karen herself. However, after having our son, my health deteriorated, leading to a less intimate marital life. At the end of the day, he was our only child. How I've regretted that over the years. But now that my son is married and my in-laws and my husband are gone, I am the one who manages this house and land. I've been left with a substantial passive income, enough to comfortably maintain this spacious home and live freely. Of course, a certain level of knowledge and the utilization of skilled individuals are essential for its upkeep. Thanks to the foundation laid by Karen and my efforts to keep up with the papers even after college, I've managed to avoid falling prey to the deceit of relatives and associated parties who frequent the premises. There are times, even at this age, when I must learn new things, but that adds a sense of vibrancy to life. There was one reason why I needed to work hard and manage everything like this. My husband left all his assets to me in his will. Why? It was due to the nature of our son, Thomas. Under normal circumstances, the inheritance would have been equally divided between myself and Thomas. However, my husband chose not to do this. He had expressed his concerns several years before passing. If I leave him half of this house now, it will go to ruins. I want you to see if Thomas can change for the better. I thought about those words as his last will and testament. Because Thomas had gotten married to his second wife. Thomas had been with his first wife, Victoria, for a little over 10 years. But he got married again just 6 months after Victoria had passed away from an illness. He married the woman he had been having an affair with. My husband, who had been out of shape, seemed astonished by what was really going on with his son, who had seemed to be doing so well. This only served to worsen his condition. Thomas was an adult and married. Up until then, I saw him as an heir with no particular problems. Yet, I confess, there might have been a tendency to overly indulge him as our only heir. It was not just me, but everyone in the family. He was academically competent, progressing from a reputable high school to college. Although he had the option of attending a college in the city, he chose to remain local. After graduation, he got a job at an acquaintance's company. And then he married a local girl. That's when Thomas expressed his desire to get his own home and live independently. We constructed a house on a piece of land we owned for the young couple. Thomas and his wife Victoria got along very well. However, after the birth of their daughter Grace, Victoria's health began to deteriorate. The doctors declared she couldn't have any more children. It reminded me of my own experiences, so I did what I could to help her. Her biological mother frequently visited her too. We also arranged for babysitters and housekeepers. For a time, Victoria's health seemed to get better. But about a decade later, she was diagnosed with cancer. Looking back, Victoria was an incredibly resilient woman. She probably felt guilty for the trouble her health issues caused shortly after their marriage. That's likely why she endured so much during this time. Unfortunately, by the time the cancer was discovered, it was already too late. With our granddaughter Grace clinging to her, Victoria passed away far too young. During this time, I felt sorrow for various reasons. The most significant reason was how much I thought of Victoria as my own daughter. I also dearly loved my granddaughter, Grace. It pained me that she lost her mother. But there was another major issue weighing heavily on my heart. While Victoria was receiving medical treatment every weekend, Thomas already had a mistress. Perhaps that's why he hardly ever visited her. After Victoria's death, Thomas remarried in less than 6 months. His new wife, Olivia, was originally a woman from the club Thomas frequented. Surprisingly, by that time, they had already been in a relationship for over 5 years. Victoria's diary, which she left behind for me, was filled with detailed accounts of the days Thomas stopped coming home. Maybe she intended to use it as evidence for a divorce one day. We'll never know now. The new wife, Olivia, was 2 years older than Thomas. She moved into the house we had built without hesitation with her daughter, Aurora, who was 6 years older than Grace. Of course, I was opposed to this marriage. Thomas had been unfaithful to Victoria and had an affair with a woman in the nightlife business for a long time. He rarely bothered to visit his sick wife, and he even remarried soon after she was gone. I never imagined my son could be so heartless. But Thomas said, "I married the woman you set me up with, Mom. Haven't I fulfilled my duty?" Besides, Victoria wasn't perfect either. She fell ill before bearing a male heir. What was the point of marrying her? I couldn't even enjoy a good marital life with her. I had to get out and blow off steam, or else it would have affected my work. I had always known Thomas was cold towards Victoria. But this was beyond cruel. I blamed myself, wondering where it all went wrong with Thomas. Had we spoiled him too much, being our only son? Certainly, both my husband and I had done so. And the people surrounding us had pampered him as the only son of a prestigious family. But still, we had taught him right from wrong when he was young. With these thoughts, I had stayed away from my son's household for a while. It was also because of how busy I was following my husband's death. They would only visit at Christmas. But that was a mistake. It happened one day towards the end of the year. The temperature fluctuated wildly even into December, with days warm enough to make you sweat after only moving around a little, followed by sudden freezing winds. It was not easy for an aging person like myself. Nevertheless, it was the end of the year. While I was in the middle of dealing with reports from various sources, my private mobile phone suddenly rang. Who could it be? It was an unfamiliar number. But it was my private phone. Not many people knew this number. I decided to answer.
"Excuse me, are you Grace's grandmother?"
It was a young woman's voice. Grace's, yes, I am. And you are?
"I'm sorry for the sudden call. I'm Aurora."
It was Olivia's daughter. Why was she contacting me?
"I don't have much time, so let me just say this. Could you please come to our house right away?"
Where was she calling from? The background noise was quite loud.
Excuse me? What's going on?
I understand it's hard to earn your trust, seeing as I'm the one calling you. But there's no time. I'll explain later. I'm sorry.
With that, Aurora ended the call. It felt like I was being skillfully manipulated, but fortunately, I had a bit of time to spare. As I hurried outside to get my car, a cold, dry breeze brushed against my cheeks. I suddenly remembered that today was colder than yesterday. I drove to my son's house, a place I hadn't visited for some time, and parked in the driveway. It had enough room for 4 cars, but there were only 2. Were Thomas and the others there? With that thought, I got out of the car and headed towards the entrance. Just then, Grace?
Grandma!
I rushed over to her. Grace was sitting on the concrete steps of the entrance, hugging her knees and looking cold in her school tracksuit.
What's going on? Why are you out here in such light clothing? And where are your mom and dad?
They went on an overseas trip with my sister.
What?
I felt something was off when I heard those words.
Anyway, get in the car. You're freezing.
In a rush, I got Grace into the car and bought her a warm drink from the first grocery store I saw. She must have been really cold. She carefully warmed her hands before slowly opening the lid and taking a sip. I wanted to ask her immediately what had happened, but decided it was more important to drive safely back home. Once home, I took Grace to the living room. I called the housekeeper on the way and asked for 2 warm cups of tea and some snacks. The moment we entered the room and Grace felt the warmth, she looked relieved, and that gave me a really bad feeling.
Feeling better?
Yeah. Her response and her whole demeanor seemed younger than I remembered. She should be a growing girl at the age of 14. Even when she cried by her mother's sickbed, her wrists seemed to have more flesh on them. Wrists, hands?
Grace, what happened here?
Upon closer inspection, Grace's hands had severe chapping. I remember kids sometimes had that when I was young, but it's not something you see often nowadays.
Oh, this started last year. It looks painful. Are you using any cream?
No.
I don't have any cream. I think it's from using hot water for bathing, washing dishes, and laundry.
What? No housekeeper lately?
Dad made her leave. Said it costs too much, so he told me to take on her job.
What about your mom? Olivia?
She's busy with lots of stuff, and Dad doesn't like it if her hands get rough.
And your stepsister?
My sister is.
I stopped her.
Did they tell you to call her that?
Grace nodded silently.
Dad told me to call her that when we're outside. At home, I call her Aurora. I prefer that too.
All right, then let's go with that.
Okay. And Grandma, that person isn't my mom. She told me to call her Olivia. I don't want to, but if I don't, she hits me.
Grace said with a bitter smile. What does that mean? What had been going on in that household while I had been staying away? Eventually, after eating about half of the cake brought to her, Grace suddenly seemed to remember something. She reached into the pocket of her tracksuit and pulled out a mobile phone. It looked like the kind a grade schooler would have. Grace used it and began typing a message.
What are you doing?
Aurora told me to message her when you arrived, Grandma.
She did.
Yes. Aurora bought me this phone.
Really?
What about your previous one?
Dad took it away not long after he remarried. That person told him it was too early for me to have one.
That person. She must be referring to Olivia.
Didn't your dad say anything?
Grace shrugged her shoulders and frowned.
Dad doesn't know anything about me. I couldn't get in touch with my friends for a while, so Aurora bought me this phone, saying she's sorry it's not the latest model. She also told me to make sure she'll never find it.
Make sure she'll never find it.
Who is she? It's Olivia, who had taken away the previous phone. Oh, Grandma. Aurora messaged back. She's on her way here from the airport. Really? Wasn't she supposed to be on a trip abroad? She said she'd pretend to go and come back, so she told me to wait. She said she'd slip away somehow. What exactly was going on between these two? At that moment, all I could do was wait. Aurora arrived at our house 3 hours later, after taking multiple buses. It's a provincial city, after all. Even if she came straight from the nearest airport, it would take a considerable amount of time. I'm sorry, Arya. Thank you for picking up Grace after such a short and sudden call. Aurora apologized deeply. Aurora. Her tone was clear and firm. Her gaze was unwavering. I thought to myself that although this girl looked flashy like Olivia, she seemed well-grounded.
So what's with those two? Going on a trip abroad?
They had been talking about going with the three of us for a while. But I wasn't sure what would happen there, so I pretended to get sick to get away. They planned to spend 3 weeks abroad, going all the way from Italy to the UK.
3 weeks? What about their jobs?
This story seemed even darker than I had anticipated.
And it seems like my mother was planning to hand me over to that man during this trip.
What do you mean?
Exactly what I said just now. That man had his eyes on both my mother and I from the beginning.
Oh, my goodness.
Hey, it's true, Grandma.
Grace interjected, clenching her fist and sitting next to Aurora.
I saw Dad insisting Aurora join him when I was done cleaning the bath many times. She always managed to brush it off as a harsh joke, but Dad would click his tongue and yell at me to go away when I was wandering around nearby.
No, it's because of Grace that it didn't get any worse than that. I was always worried that Grace would get hurt. But I can't imagine what would have happened if she wasn't there. What on earth was going on? My son. How far has he corrupted? I pondered for a moment in front of the two girls. The way they protected each other. It seemed that they got along well. No, it was more than that. They were like comrades against a common enemy.
So, how do you get by? Grace, you said earlier that Olivia told you to call her by her name, right?
Yes. My mother started dating him for the money and even stayed with him through marriage. I've seen that man coming over to our house since high school. I've noticed the way he gradually started looking at me inappropriately. And now, because we live in the same house, he's getting cocky. Oh, how I hate it.
Aurora said this while hugging herself, clearly disgusted.
But I'm grateful for being allowed to continue my studies. I've been going to college and working part-time, trying to stay away from home as much as possible. Though, I thought about moving out. Aurora stayed because of me.
Grace interjected.
Even today. Those two left me alone without giving me a key or any money, telling me to go somewhere.
And in that tracksuit. The wind would make her feel even colder. The sight of her waiting there, hugging her knees.
I waited because Aurora told me to. Until those two boarded the plane and it was clear they weren't coming back. So, that's why you called?
Yes.
I was right by their side until just before their boarding time. But if I had left Grace alone, she would have caught a cold. So I made a call when they weren't looking. I knew she was still cold, though. I'm sorry.
Honestly, they could have contacted me earlier, but I guess these young girls wanted to make sure those two were definitely abroad before reaching out. And now that they're relying on me, I must do what I can for these girls.
Aurora, do you have the keys? To their house?
Yes.
Then let's go now. And just take what's important.
What are we going to do, Grandma?
I smiled.
We don't need that house anymore, do we?
And then, we were 3 weeks into the new year. The new year had begun and people started going back to school and work. Just then, 2 people came storming into my house, dragging suitcases.
Mom! What was that all about?
Thomas yelled at me right away. Apparently, he had gone back home without giving any thought. And then he saw it. There was nothing left there.
Well, that was my property. I thought it was useless, so I had it demolished and the land sold. Oh, your belongings are in this storage room.
Right after that incident, I had contacted a real estate agent and a demolition company I knew well. When they learned of the situation, they immediately took me up on my offer. I tossed the keys to the storage room at Thomas. The two of them missed, and a small clang echoed in the entrance.
Don't mess with me, Mom. That was my house.
Oh, why would you think that?
Huh? What do you mean? Thomas, you seem to be mistaken. That house was built for you, but it was registered under me and my husband. And now, it's mine. What does it matter what I do with it? What about my daughters? What did you do with them? Your daughters? You're one to talk, Olivia.
I sneered. Then, please, come in. I gestured for the two to come inside.
What? Not the living room?
I led them silently. Our destination was the spacious hall in the back. Thank you for waiting. I opened the door after walking down the central corridor. There were a dozen or so people waiting in the room. But the first people that caught the eyes of the two behind me were
Grace? Aurora?
my granddaughters were sitting next to the chair I was about to take.
Aurora, why did you ignore my calls? Grace, you ratted us out to Mom. When did you become so cunning?
Thomas and Olivia, perhaps in a fit of anger, with red faces, tried to approach the girls, but they were restrained by the people in the room and forced to sit opposite us. Still looking at us breathlessly, they didn't seem to notice the people around us. Now that everyone is here, let's begin. I looked around at everyone and spoke. Let's proceed, everyone. Thank you for your cooperation. Shall we begin with you? Thank you.
Hey Thomas, tough break coming back from your long vacation. But there's no going forward from here.
At that voice, Thomas was startled and turned to his left.
Sir!
The managing director spoke in a calm voice, but his eyes weren't smiling.
I never thought you'd actually apply for a 3-week vacation. I hoped you'd quit such bad habits by now.
Thomas shrank under the low, commanding voice. He's always been arrogant towards his inferiors, but weak to those above him. He's been like that since childhood.
But until now, you have approved.
Look, Thomas.
What do you think your value is? What?
If you don't know, let me tell you.
Your only value to our company is your status as the heir to this prestigious family.
Thomas gritted his teeth.
But it seems that doesn't mean anything anymore. What do you mean?
The managing director then turned to me. Thomas. I looked straight at my son. His gaze visibly faltered.
I was going to announce to everyone here today the contents of the will I wrote the other day in the presence of your lawyers. A will? Yes, I had to write it in advance, right? Otherwise, my inheritance would go to you, wouldn't it? Mom? I've already stored it in a safe place.
It's simple.
In the event of my passing, all of my inheritance will go to Grace.
Thomas's jaw dropped in shock. Then, after a few seconds,
No, I must have heard something strange. It's odd, maybe my ears haven't adjusted from the flight?
No.
Arya hasn't said anything strange.
Our family lawyer interjected.
The previous head of the family excluded Thomas as the heir because of his behavior and spending at that time. I remember Arya's words well.
Yes, I remember that time.
Only now you remember?
I shook my head in disbelief. Then the company's managing director took over the conversation, picking up where the lawyer and I left off.
It seems Arya has decided to completely strip you of your inheritance rights. That means there's no reason for us to treat you specially anymore. But how can? What mattered to our company was the connection with this region's large landowning family, not your personal capabilities.
Now, what to do next? The managing director looked at me. I nodded slightly.
Please proceed as you see fit.
Thank you.
Thomas, the entire company knows you applied for a 3-week vacation for a mere trip. The higher-ups are planning your demotion and reassignment. Be grateful that's all you're going to get.
Thomas collapsed on the spot as if all his strength had left him.
That's ridiculous.
At that moment, Olivia leaned forward.
Arya, if Grace is the heir, what about Aurora? Is Aurora different?
Aurora? Why would you think that?
She's Thomas's child too, isn't she? Isn't Aurora sitting next to Arya for that reason? Stop the unsightly act, Mother.
Aurora sharply cut in.
Unsightly? I'm not related to this family by a single drop of blood. How could a complete stranger claim any rights here? Are you stupid? How dare you speak to your mother that way? I've been leaving messages asking when you'd rejoin our trip, and you didn't reply at all. That's right. We've been looking forward to it.
Thomas even chimed in.
Looking forward to it.
Aurora took out her mobile phone.
Excuse me, everyone. Could you listen to this for a moment?
The room buzzed with curiosity.
Come on, Aurora, won't you join me in the bath today?
I'm sorry, I have a part-time job now.
What? Can't you just do as I say?
A dull thump, probably the sound of Thomas slapping the washing machine.
Stop it, Dad. Aurora doesn't like it. Shut up.
There was a noise along with Grace's voice.
Grace!
Aurora, you have a part-time job, right? Go, hurry. Thank you. There were some footsteps, then more sounds in the background. Ah, so what the two told me was just a fraction of the whole story.
What's this? That's Thomas's voice, isn't it?
Everyone in the room looked at Aurora, Grace, and Thomas in turn with somber expressions. Aurora stopped the recording and stated firmly,
This is just part of it. I constantly felt danger like this. And Grace, being forced to clean the bathrooms and toilets, helped me on such occasions. Not just this time. She always let me know when he was around. How could she do that?
Grace silently glared at Olivia, then took out her own mobile phone.
What? I took your phone away.
Olivia, you just said you took it away? I posed the question.
In this day and age, even elementary school kids need mobile phones, and you took one from Grace, a middle schooler?
Mom, it's part of her education, right?
That's right. She doesn't need the latest model. Then at least give her a phone with basic functions. Nowadays, even going out with friends seems to require exchanging messages, and you get news from school too, right? Do you two even pay attention to notices from her school? Huh? I'm busy, you know. Do I look like I have time to attend her school events? What keeps you so busy?
Aurora chuckled.
What's that, Aurora? Mocking your parent like that.
Well, your busy has always been about deceiving men, hasn't it?
What?
Thomas's gaze turned towards Olivia.
Sorry to keep you waiting. John, please come in.
Aurora called out loudly. The door opened, revealing a man slightly younger than Thomas and his wife, and another man in a suit.
What?
Olivia's expression changed drastically.
It's been a while, Olivia. I never thought you'd end up in such a place. After all, you cost me everything. What are you doing here?
Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce John. He's one of the victims this woman swindled money from in the past. Oh, Aurora. You said one, do you mean there are more? I asked Aurora. Yes.
This woman always had men coming and going, but John was the most tragic case, even though he was the most decent among them.
Since you're here, please tell us everything about this woman.
I see. John, what did Olivia do to you? Marriage fraud and theft.
The room buzzed at those words.
What are you talking about? You gave me that money voluntarily. I was under the impression that we were going to open a store together as a family, that's why I agreed.
John glared at Olivia, his gaze filled with contempt.
We needed some cash for a deposit on a nice property we had found back then, so I withdrew all my savings and handed the cash to this woman. But the very next day, she disappeared. Is there any proof?
Aurora operated her phone and played another audio clip.
Come on, let's go. What's this all of a sudden? We've earned plenty of cash from John, so, we need to move to another town quickly.
Olivia slammed her hand on the table.
How did you even get that? Of course I did. I was always preparing to drag you down to hell. How dare you say such things to your mother? Huh? I can no longer consider you as my mother. You beat me up and skipped my meals just because you thought some guy you'd been dating flirted with me. And this trip, you were planning to set me up with your husband, right? I gave birth to you. I have the right to do whatever I want. Sure, it seems the term child abuse doesn't exist in your world.
At that moment, the man behind John stood up.
So, you have more hidden crimes, it seems.
The man pulled out a police badge. Olivia leaped back in shock upon seeing it.
Why are the police here? You really are clueless. John is suing you for fraud and theft. Isn't that right?
Yes.
Aurora found me and set up this meeting.
Olivia, you should give up now.
I can testify in any amount of detail of the fraud, theft, and child abuse against me. There are things that you did to me that I can't talk about here.
I heard Grace swallow nervously. So that's why Aurora wanted to protect Grace from experiencing what she did.
I'll testify about everything that happened to me, no matter how small. It's disgusting to even recall, but if it puts you behind bars, it's worth it.
What a strong girl. My son grew up to be an awful man, and he fell for a terrible woman, but I'm glad I got to meet Aurora. After that, the two got divorced. It sounds silly, but it was really when the money ran out that the relationship ended. When Thomas visited Olivia at the police station, they just hurled insults at each other. Yes, Olivia's deeds gradually came to light with the audio data and photos Aurora had been collecting, and more crimes surfaced. The child abuse Aurora suffered was as horrid as the police suspected, so they told me after their interviews. Hearing that, I resolved to do anything I could for Aurora. But she insisted she just needed help finding a job after graduation. So, I decided to arrange an excellent job for her. Thomas was demoted and transferred at once, as the managing director had said. To a regional branch, no less. On top of that, he became a section manager. It seems it was too difficult to demote him from a head of department to a regular employee. So, they placed him where he could do the least harm. In a region he had never been. In the end, it was this land of ours which we had protected that ruined my son. As a mother, all I can hope for is that he becomes somewhat decent in the outside world. Not that I expect much. As for us, the sound of children every day is such a joy. Now, this spacious house is home to me, my granddaughter, and her stepsister. The job I arranged for Aurora is to work alongside Grace, who will eventually inherit this house, serving as her assistant. This way, there is no dependency.
If Arya says it's necessary, I'll acquire any qualifications needed.
With such a strong girl by her side, I'm confident that Grace's future is secure. However, no matter how resilient Aurora is, there might be times when the past abuse haunts her. For the time being, I'll support these two. I need to remain in good health in order to do so. Thomas became the black sheep of this family because I was reluctant to abandon my own son. And there was also that parasitic woman. From now on, I want these girls, who worked so hard to eliminate them, to enjoy the life that they deserve for their age.